It's the pre-market ritual you never knew you needed. Get ready to gap and go with the Calum Trading Institute.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Gap and Go. The last 2 weeks we've been talking about a de-escalation. In fact, we've had certain deals with regards to the tariff news coming this August 1. We've seen some of the biggest partners of United States in terms of trade all seem to have some form of closure. You've seen Japan, you've seen Vietnam, you've seen especially EU, China, Mexico, etc., etc. Um, and really, the hardest part, again, everybody's wait and seeing for China. And it looks like it's going to be kicked down the can. The can's going to be kicked down the road once again, and delayed once again. And it looks like, markets, what's the best way to describe it? Are pricing in the good and the bad both together. And I'll show flows later just to see where the markets are, continuously pouring more into ETFs. But Jason, maybe you can share your thoughts first on the market.
I think so far, no, yung trade deals are a lot more benign than what people first expected nung Liberation Day in April. Diba? Like, turned out to be still a good deal for Vietnam. Investments are still going there. Kaya umakit yung VNM eh. Diba? Japan also went up. The deal was better than expected. Diba? So obviously, yung China, wala pa, diba? But I think yung the past few days, parang tingin ko significant yung sa EU. It's a gigantic lopsided deal in favor of the US. Diba? Like 15% tariff on exports to the US, zero tariffs on US goods, 750 billion in energy purchases, 600 billion investments. Wow. Okay. And actually, I think that's important because the dollar is way oversold. Parang tingin ko kaya nag-pullback na malaking euro the other day. Diba? And it can set off a dollar rally kasi parang wow, such a good deal, diba? And it's also important because if you look at this year, the rest of the world has outperformed the US market so much. Diba? So it could set off some, profit-taking dollar rally, diba? And we have to watch out for that, diba? I think yung other significant news yesterday, oil jumped 4% because of the Trump moving the deadline for the Russia-Ukraine war to stop, like from 10 to 12 days. Although, tingin ko noise lang yun. Hopefully.
I think, one statement that was made the last 2 weeks, and it's nothing new, but I think it just reinforced the position of the United States. And we all know that the reason why, President Trump has to do what he has to do, it's because the whole world now is losing to China. Let's be clear, right? Manufacturing in all parts of the economy, talo na lahat yan eh. Right? And in fact, we talked about the most important race that is happening today, which is AI. And US today, it was a great statement because United States today cannot lose the AI war. And so part of that, AI race, you can talk about semiconductor where NVIDIA still has a few years lead over its counterparts. You can talk about TSMC being 5 years in advance versus its closest competitor in China, which is SMCI, or Huawei, for example. But one of the key components and parts of US versus China was able to produce things at a lower, in a more efficient manner. And what do I mean? Is that even in terms of ADAS or driverless technology, right? You've seen China companies produce the same amount. It might be weaker, but at 1/10 the cost and 1/10 the efficiency. And so energy has been a huge proponent of this AI, right? And part of it has been China is going to build 25 nuclear factories, 25 nuclear facilities already under construction, and US, zero.
Oh, like I have some fast facts, sorry. Like China produces 11,000 terawatt hours of energy. US produces 4,000. So, diba, the AI is just energy transformed, diba? And some studies show that the computational power needs of AI is doubling every 100 days.
Mhm.
So it's a gigantic race.
Which for me, United States and China are put into a position where I think China also understands they have everything to lose. United States is playing the what's the best way for it? The bully in trying to, keep that dominance into power to play, right? Now it's not picking sides. I don't think that's the irrelevant part. I think the point being is that we're just trying to see from a bird's eye view what's happening from a macro perspective, right? Because then what I will show you guys next will probably make sense in terms of, let's say, flows. I think the key part here is that post Liberation Day, you've seen weakness in terms of equity in the month of May, and then June, July, boom, we're back. So I think the point being here is that markets don't have a choice but to continue to pour both into equity and to fixed income, right? I think that has been clear. So pension funds all over the world, or even GSIS, has to keep on putting money into the asset allocation. So part of that in terms of the equity, uh, and leading on that forefront, especially with regards to playing defensive and AI, we've always talked about the United States and the big tech, and that has been the clear-cut winner over the last few months, right? We've seen a rebound back all the way to previous highs. The ones who have not CapEx or even put much investment into AI has actually been the laggard, especially including in the Mag 7, diba? Look at the entire Mag 7, Apple's at the bottom of
Apple.
that list. And then you see Meta, Amazon, Google, uh, including Tesla, pouring heavy investment into the AI space, right? But one thing I want to point out, siguro in the month of July, first time after 12 months, Hong Kong is at the top of foreign inflow. So we can talk about that later, but I just wanted to show this brief backdrop about what's happening from a flows perspective, so that at least when I talk to, let's say, like Brian, Brian, maybe you can share some of those, stocks that have been in play, and I'm sure it's going to be the same sectors that the administration has
Yes,
been
sir.
pushing forward.
Yeah, number one is you mentioned already, energy. So like your alternative energies like Oklo,
Actually,
uh,
parang even
Mar, di ba?
the traditional is starting to go up eh.
Yeah, even BE, yung mga fuel cells, which was employed by Oracle, I think. BE, I'm thinking about also yung mga, if you look at coal, parang reversal na rin eh. Broke out of the 200-day.
I
Even
think
that traditional one is broken out.
I think the fossil fuels is the next one's gonna go up.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's really pent-up demand for it eh. Lalo na the race is ongoing, and the
yeah,
numbers that you said about energy production each year, diba? Electricity production each year comparable to China. Parang US really has a lot to run after eh. Talagang huli na
parang
sila.
you need all the energy you can get eh.
Mm. And
Actually, so
also,
the quickest way to deploy actually is still the fossil fuels, especially natural gas.
yeah, everything, lahat energy related, no? Lahat ng energy. Except wind, I guess. Baka hindi. So, that would depend on si Trump ayaw ng wind. So, yeah, and even the news about yung Stargate, the first, I think, biggest construction project in a few decades, parang 500 billion, is ongoing. It's a good sign also for them. So all these things, parang all these investments going into AI, it says a lot about one, yung level of interest rates mo. And investors are looking for growth to offset this, diba, high rates. That's why you see your equity still going up. And that pent-up demand, that would be caused by those investments, nagre-reflect din sa commodities. So,
And just
yeah.
to, I mean, give people some leeway, uh, one of the biggest concerns, maybe to early part of this year, has been consumer sentiment, right? And markets have already, although it's still down a bit, I really believe markets already priced this in. The weaker consumer spending. I think that's also the reason why people are already looking forward to progress or growth in 2026, largely because of the spending that they're going to do in terms of fiscal policy for the big, beautiful bill. It looks like the markets have already priced in a recovery also in terms of consumer spending. That's the reason why you're seeing some, reversals happen, in particular to Nike. Even in 2Q, Starbucks reported down same-store sales at a few hours ago. I'm not sure how the markets reacted, but I'd like to think that going forward, most of these things looks like could be after this drop priced in already, diba?
Yeah, hopefully it goes down to the wages. If you remember, the US is mainly a service-oriented economy, and much of their spending is really connected to their housing prices also. And I think the latest data is, well, what Trump has been harping is he wanted the rates to go down so people can afford housing. I think that's also one trigger if they're able to do it. Diba? More mortgages, more spending for them. So we'll see.
I think the
Next.
markets have not, this is just me. So we're going through spending. We're seeing the big tech also go through spending. The assumption being made here is that all that investment into AI and CapEx is going to lead into higher productivity growth. And would you say that is happening today, where I don't know if it's because of the job cuts, because AI is also replacing some of the grunt work.
Yeah, that's the question I think also kasi the Google CEO si Pichai talked about it that what they used to do is if they see let's say they see a new path to growth, let's say a new sector that they want to invest in, what they do is look for people to employ. That's the first thing that they do. They ramp up their personnel. This time around, it's different though. They look into AI first to attack that growth opportunity. I
I
think that's
also
the
agree.
risk.
Yeah.
I think that's the risk for wages at least. Wage growth at
I
least.
think any technology kasi parang may adoption curve eh. Parang tingin ko we're in the phase na a lot of disruption before eventually you're gonna see the wholesale effect on the economy, which should be good, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if you're in terms of labor, you really have to raise your skill, diba? For this new industry.
Well, the reason why I point that out, it's because I think what will influence whether you'll have a big rally or not, obviously, is going to be inflation, interest rates. Let's be clear about that. I think one thing that we've been harping on is that unless we see some level of systemic risk, it's also hard to see this, go down substantially, right? At the same time, you have this, I don't know, ceiling where it's hard to imagine rates also going higher because everything is also slowing down a bit, right? So there's really nothing, how would I put it, scary or systemic right now as of today, despite whatever we talk about. And it looks like liquidity is still very strong across the board. And I think that's the reason why this has been, range bound for the length of period it's at, right? And I think this goes to show even the market's resilience in terms of a buy low, sell high type of environment. Even in terms of runaways and the big speculation. Back then we've had companies, for example, like 30, 40 times price to sales with regards to informed spec, diba? Even in AI plays, you imagine, siguro kaya itong mag 20, 30 times price to sales, pero hindi. Right? If I look at things
Yes.
across the board, things are actually not valued irrationally. There might be, I actually say they're more fairly valued than overvalued, but I wouldn't say like things are like outrageously expensive just because of how much growth, even earnings, 80% of companies in terms of earnings still outperform this second quarter, right? Do you think things might change in third quarter, fourth quarter? I don't think so either. I think we're pretty much going to get status quo. That's how I see it. And unless we see something drastic, I feel like the markets are just going to be pricing in and moving in that same channel-like formation. Now, with
Yeah, I
that
think
being
all
said,
funds.
um, what I like, and part of what I like also is, China and Hong Kong. And I wanted to talk about it because for the first time, we've seen the largest inflow in Hong Kong this month of July. Partly coinciding with a breakout that's happened over the last few weeks, although we've seen a profit taking happen the last few days.
It
And I think it's
coincided
clear.
with
Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
it coincided with the Nvidia being allowed to ship again in China. And I think that's a signal that China taking a step back. O sige, we to keep the peace, second place muna kami. Di ba? Because the bully is so strong si Trump, di ba? So, I think that one signal that, sige, really China is eager to keep the peace and just do the trade,
Hmm.
di ba?
You know,
Economics first for
let's be
everything
honest.
else.
China's playing on a different timeline than the United States, right? United States is
Mm.
playing the short term. China's playing a 25, 50
Yes,
year
yes.
time frame, right? And we all know that every nalimutan ko na 4 years ba 6 years ang United States. You have a change in president, you have a change in administration. Um, in China, this guy is sitting in forever. And
Yeah.
that alone speaks volume on how both countries are also operated, right?
Mm.
It's not just that, it's also in terms of profitability and prosperity. What do I mean? Mag 7, if you guys didn't know, the I repeat, margins of the Mag 7, including Tesla, is around 35 to 40%. Okay? In China, it's half. So this includes Tencent, Meituan, Alibaba, and all the big tech. It's at 20% operating margins. So you can tell the difference of how countries are operated. In fact, that's not even on the hardware space. If you look at the hardware, so what do I mean by hardware? It's like BYD, Xiaomi, right? The margins are so slim. I think some of them are sitting at 15, 18% gross margins, right? So you have a car company that produces a higher quality company than a most of the Americans and on par with, for example, like a Porsche, and gross margins are 18%. Tell me, how do you make money when a car is priced at $35,000, which has probably
Yeah.
take you 5 times more expensive to produce elsewhere else in the world? And I think, I'm just sharing to people because I think there's a big opportunity also for regards to Hong Kong and China. Yes, there's going to be plenty of volatility because they're always going to be under attack. But I think valuations and how the tech race is going to play out, I think there might be a lot of opportunity also happening in Hong Kong. Companies even on smaller tech AI space, you're seeing plenty of investment, uh,
Mm.
even in both autonomous driver vehicles and even in other AI spaces, including healthcare, health tech on that end with Extalpi. But these are all informed speculation. Don't get me wrong. I think the point being here is that there are going to be plenty of stories to watch out for in Hong Kong, and I think people have to be aware of that. That's just the point. Guys, anything else to add?
Yeah, you'd be surprised when Nvidia was allowed to ship. Even the 981 moved higher. I
Hmm.
thought it was the opposite way.
Hmm.
Di ba? So apparently that's the approach of China. Like, for example, what they did to Tesla, di ba? They allowed Tesla to open in China only because they want their local companies to compete, similar to Tesla. And I think the approach is the same, allowing Nvidia to go into China would really strengthen their semiconductor industry also, their own semicon companies.
Okay,
Yeah, and it's
sorry,
cheaper for other tech companies because
sorry.
it will be cheaper for other tech companies because they'll be employing kasi available na yung H20 sa China. So siguro that allows them to use better chips.
All right, but at the end of the day, I think this will lead EMs and will dictate where EMs are going to be heading. And if I look at it, things look like the decline has slowed down tremendously. And now you're having this retest. I think, this thing could probably rally all the way to the 200 day. I wouldn't be surprised. So probably you're going to see more inflows happen once again to the United States. And I don't know if they're going to be pulling out, but just be careful on that. I think markets are still a buy low, sell high type of environment. And with that being said, I think that's exactly what's happening in countries that don't have tech and have no inflow. And we all know that's the Philippines. So now this has always been the dilemma about the Philippines, right? We always talk about cheap. I know it's cheap. I know it looks like a reversal. But then again, who's going to be taking it higher? And that has always been my dilemma because I just don't see growth across the board with regards to the companies. I mean, you can talk about the utilities doing well. In fact, you could talk about
Yeah.
Meralco, great earnings, actually. Sorry. Great earnings so far. In fact, for many of the other utilities, not bad, right? I'm making the assumption that Manila Water is also going to post decent earnings. One thing that has been, I don't know, bothering me is still consumer sentiment in 2Q. And I think we're a 70% domestic consumption country, right? So if we cannot get consumer earnings to sit at, I don't know, slightly higher than GDP, so for example, it's at 5.5, maybe, give or take maybe 7-8% in terms of consumer earnings. Parang kulang eh. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. I mean, that's just how I look at for,
Yeah, for sure.
foreign institutions to start piling into the country if they start to see 7-8% earnings growth. And that's not a lot. It's just, you know, it's just, I guess that's the baseline for people to start coming back. I don't know.
For sure, it has to be like in line with consumption growth, diba? But I mean, I just look at my house help, what they're doing on the side. Sumusugal sila pa piso-piso eh.
Well,
So, tingin ko factor yan eh.
and the winners so far have been your smaller banks. You can talk
Smaller
about
banks,
AUB. I think AUB did 6
yeah.
billion first half. Great earnings. PNB and all the companies and banks that are trading at 40 cents, right? I think CUL published a report about Security Bank because Security Bank, no question, that's is 40 cents to a dollar. Most of these banks are going to be making a lot of money. We can talk about BDO and BPI coming from high bases. That's the reason why they're being sold off today. But let me be clear, although BPI provisions went up and BDO net profit went slightly down in 2Q, these companies are still making 80 billion, 90 billion a year, right? I think the banks are the big banks especially, most of the good part has been priced in, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I think these guys are just going to make too much money, and that's the reason why they've been the biggest outperformers the past few years. But again, to have this sustainability in this country, I really believe it has to come from the consumer end, and that's the reason why everybody's wait and seeing on the SM side, and even some parts, maybe even also on the Ayala land side. So, that's just my 2 cents in the market.
That's a
Other than
sad
that,
2 cents.
let's talk about the biggest news if you guys have anything else.
Uh, I guess going back on the macro, no, I think the bright side is that since we didn't go up that much in the past few months, since walang inflows, I think even with the strong dollar, it's gonna just stay sideways. Kasi like if you look at regional markets, actually went up a lot eh. Like yung mga Thailand, Indonesia.
But they also didn't go down as deep as us, also. Diba?
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
But let me be clear to everyone here. I'm not bearish. Let me just I'm not bearish. I just think it's gonna be like a buy low, sell high type environment. So if this starts to go down, I really don't think like we're gonna see like, like that. It's just more that we might see a sell off, for example, like in because of the dollar, but I think it's just gonna be here. I mean, that's just how I see it. I think even then you'll probably have a range bound type of market, and all you have to do is that if it's being sold off, buy and accumulate those companies with great yield. Except that when it's starting to break out, keep your expectations in check. I think that's the key part because people are expecting a blow off in equity markets like that, and then hopefully this happens, right? I don't know. I'm not in that camp, and I could be wrong also, but. Don't get me wrong. I think it's still a buy low, sell high type environment, and that should not change on how you buy companies. Okay. We'll probably end by talking about the most important thing. Sona happened. No talk whatsoever about e-gaming. And so to give people perspective, I think Okada was down 19% in 2Q. Even Melco, sorry, on Bell side, Melco reported a decline also in gaming revenues in 2Q. E-gaming, I think our estimate for this quarter was around 4.8 billion to 6 billion in profit for Bingo Plus this 2Q, higher than the 4 billion it posted in the first quarter. I mean, we're still wait and see, but that's the estimate that we've been getting. This thing sold off, I don't know, 80% to 14 pesos per share, rebounded close to triple already in the last 2 weeks. You guys want to share your thoughts before we end today?
Yeah. I just
I
hope
think
the company morphs into something else, like use their money to. This is how sad this. Yeah, after how many decades that in existence now, this market. After how many decades, parang, what do we have? Casino.
Well,
Probably, hopefully, yeah.
well,
More
it's
innovation, hopefully, for the Philippines.
well actually what I noticed ever since the this Bingo Plus Digi Plus show, the volume has dried up in the market. So I think it's really very significant we get some clarity in what's gonna happen here.
But for traders, some traders are know how to play the bounces. And the recent sell-off in DigiPlus really is a very short-term disparity caused by the sell-off. Kasi they're still making, as you said, a lot of money. That sell-off really caused that disparity at least for the bounce.
okay. I'll probably end by sharing my view.
Hmm.
I really hope, I think, and I really hope that this is the last quarter of peak earnings for Bingo Plus. Hopefully regulation starts to kick in. Maybe not an outright ban because I don't think an outright ban would be good. Because then they'll go illegal. Hopefully this is the peak. And my point being here is that even if Bingo Plus does 3 billion a quarter, that's still 12 billion a year. That's still a lot of money for Bingo Plus. So I think maybe the froth and the hype is gone. So like this part here, I think is gone. I think we're at a period where even on the rally, parang na-price in na rin eh, right? Actually, valuations of Bingo Plus are cheaper than Bloom today. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
So Bloom is down here, Plus is up here, yet Plus is still cheaper than Bloom. So I think the point being here is that I think we've seen peak earnings also with regards to Bingo. Well, I hope we've seen peak earnings for Bingo Plus because they're just making too much money. And I think you'll probably see more range bound activity. Wait for this to start settling down. And I think that's where most of the markets have already priced in with regards to Bingo Plus. All right. So with that being said, I think we talked a lot about today's Gap and Go, coming from dollar, coming from yields, coming from the BBB, big beautiful bill, coming to tariffs and the postponement again of the China tariffs. Markets are really finding ground, and I think what's going to lead once again is going to be the dollar. So if there's anything else, watch the dollar. It looks like it's breaking out, and when it starts to break out, um, be patient, take a step aside, especially in terms of the emerging market. I like Hong Kong and China a lot. I think valuations are still very attractive. But again, I'm also playing very defensive with regards to what's happening just because of the movement in the dollar. Again, Philippines is also in that same boat, still a buy low, sell high type of environment. Again, we're positive, we're not negative, except that we want to be buying cheap, not be buying at resistance. And I think the market has rewarded patience and prudence for buying low and selling on rallies. And I think that will be continued the case as long as yields and inflation will remain elevated in the medium term. All right. So with that being said, thanks guys so much, and I'll see you guys in a few weeks. Bye guys.